This roundtable has the title of Lessons Learned from Teaching Support Services and Experts Involved in Digital Education Support and Resources. And this is a continuation of yesterday, because yesterday we were speaking with some professors, teachers, and also students that were involved in the discussion. And today we have the second perspective from the services, support services of teaching, and also other kind of services and expertise services for teachers and in this pandemic crisis. So let's go to start. Here on the screen, you have the schedule for this roundtable. We will follow a little this turn. So the first one is Albert Basart Capmany. He comes from the AQU, from the evaluation, Catalan evaluation system of quality. And he will present us quality assurance and digital education, maintaining the quality in the new scenario. So we will start with you, and then we will continue with the rest. Thank you, Albert.
Okay, thank you. It's okay, can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Cristobal, Professor Cristobal Urbano, for contacting me and asking me to participate in this roundtable. Well, you know, maintaining the quality in the new scenario is something, it's just a name, but we will try to see some aspects of this this new situation in which we are right now from this crisis. My name is Albert. I work in the Quality Assurance Department of AQU Catalunya, which is the Catalan University Quality Assurance Agency. It's placed in Barcelona, the city where we are now, and to situate it in the European map, just very quick figures. We have in Catalonia 12 universities, 7 public, 5 private universities. One of these private universities is fully online. It's a fully online university. In terms of the amount of students, you can see some figures and some distribution. Just to have a little bit of context, we have in Catalonia more or less 560 bachelor studies, more than 600 master studies, 254 PhD degrees, and other figures, a lot of that, as you can see. Well, quality assurance, I don't know, I imagine that some of you or all of you are engaged or involved in a certain moment in a quality assurance procedure. I can imagine. We're talking about, you know, standards, processes and procedures, criteria, guidelines, funny stuff. It sounds exciting for sure for all of you. Well, just say that the agency is composed by normal people, nice people, joyful people, I would say, because sometimes we see the agencies in a, well, from other perspectives. You can understand. I will start with a question for the audience. Well, just a general question. My question to start, we will ask at the end again, but I would say, are you agree with this sentence? Internal and external quality assurance processes are enablers, are facilitators for the adoption of digital education strategies in your institution? Or maybe you will find you are more comfortable with internal, external quality assurance processes are barriers for the adoption of digital education strategies. If someone wants to say something here, mix, enablers. Thank you. Okay, sometimes, not always. Okay. Very quick. We in AQU Catalunya, we do program and institutional review evaluations. Sure, you know a little bit of that. We also evaluate the teaching staff individually. We have a department of knowledge generation. So we do many things, and going more in depth here, where our range or set of different processes of evaluation is diverse. We do validation, which is an evaluation of the programs who start or which when university wants to implement a new degree, bachelor, master, etc. We do the monitoring of these programs, of these degrees, accreditation, of course, etc. And we also do institutional assessments. We certificate the internal quality assurance systems of each institution, of each center. We do institutional accreditation. We will do institutional accreditation in a near future, which is something that in general all the agencies in Europe do. And I mentioned this European perspective because there is a document which is like our basic principles. It's called Standards and Guidelines, European Standards and Guidelines, and all the agencies in Europe must follow these standards. And I will stop here quite a moment just to show you which is the core of our standards, what we evaluate when we go to a university to conduct an evaluation. We ask our institutions to have a policy for quality assurance, approved policy for quality assurance, and public and transparent. Okay, we asked our universities to have procedures for designing and approval of their programs. We ask our universities to adopt the student-centered learning paradigm, to have also processes and procedures that are fair, that are transparent, that are etc. For student admission, progression, recognition. Of course, we ask our universities to have the appropriate teaching staff for delivering courses in experience, research experience, teaching experience, and also in numbers, enough teaching staff to conduct the degrees. The same with learning resources and student support. And then we ask our institutions to manage information, to take appropriate decisions, and to be accountable, be transparent, have enough public information for the students and for the society. Finally, to have periodic review programs internally and then externally, quality assurance processes. And that's all. We ask no less, no more than that to our institutions. Okay, here I'm talking a little bit about the issue that brings us here, the COVID crisis and digital education and all of this. I have some questions here. If you want to answer, you are welcome. Do you think are this set of standards applicable in crisis times? Or are appropriate for all modes of delivering studies or teaching activities, e-learning, hybrid, etc. Do you think that digital education require different standards and criteria, different from this one? Well, it exists a discussion about that, okay? And I will try to say something before regarding all of that. And if we want to say something about that, is welcome. Also their background. Gemma asked me to explain a little bit our perspective from this time, the perspective from the agency and myself, my own perspective of what has happened during this COVID-19 crisis. And here we would say that the pedagogical and technological challenge has been enormous. It's not a secret. And we think that our institutions had a quick reaction, quite quick reaction, and showed capacity to adapt to a new situation institutionally and then individually all the teaching staff, all the students, or most of teaching staff, most of students, to a new situation that reported effort from their part, a lot of hours, a lot of sacrifice, because a change always implies a big effort. But I would say that they succeed in general to compliance with regulations, to compliance with situations that were very difficult to comply. For instance, what happened with internships, what happened with the assessment of the students, a lot of matters that were very complicated, difficult. But in general, we would say we succeed, and we succeed also in the technological challenge, from face-to-face to video conferences, etc. Okay. Then, related to quality assurance procedures, I would say somehow the same. I would say internal procedures and external procedures of quality assurance were flexible enough to continue to carry on with the procedures and doesn't affect, for instance, the provision of data that the university institutions provide to the agencies and to the governments, the keeping evidences from the teaching and learning processes in a radically different context, etc. And the institutions also shown a strong commitment with quality assurance processes. I will give you the example of, we, the agency, conduct site visits to the universities to accreditate programs, accreditate centers, and we continued with this development of visits of accreditation, not on site, not face to face, but virtually through video conferences. The effort from the institutions and from the agency was very big, but we succeed. In 1 year, from 2020 and 2021, we did more than 250 site visits, online site visits, which is a success. So I would say, okay, good reaction to the crisis at the first moment. Then, okay, this is a couple of pieces of news I will show you. Recent, after the emergency, what happens after the lockdown ends? Another piece of news from this is October, this is very recent. A new report highlights that pandemic forced shift might not be temporary. So nearly 60% of colleges want to keep distance learning momentum going. We are in a deep change. We are in a deep shift. Many of the changes that we did very quick to adapt to that situation are going to remain with us. And here, you see, this is more complicated. Now it's not green, the background in the slide, as you can see. Because within this transition from traditional to digital, I don't have numbers, but a lot of our degrees, bachelor degrees, master's degrees in our institutions are doing this shift to stay. I mean, traditional face-to-face, on-site master degrees or bachelors are changing to fully virtual studies or hybrid studies, And we think that this transition must carry on, must be accompanied with yes, thank you. With a strong and clear institutional strategy for this change. One thing is to change in a period of crisis. Now, other thing is a change to remain, and this change will remain. So it has to be a clear institutional strategy here to do this change. The same with a clear educational model for e-learning. Of course, professional development and training of specifically the teaching staff, but all the staff in the universities, and also help support for the students, strong units and services of support. The proactive participation of students and staff in this new design of delivery, the courses, the degrees. Use of digital educational resources. Here, I'm not the expert. You are the expert in this, in these aspects. But it seems clear that we can not use the same strategies, the same material, the same resources, educational resources now and from 2 years ago. And of course, investment in infrastructures and equipment, etc., etc. Here is when some problems started to appear. It's not a secret. Some of the degrees that ask permission to the agency to do this transition succeed, and some of them doesn't succeed. We had problems with programs that wanted to do this change, this deep change, I would say, without having some of these aspects clearly defined, clearly established. So well, here it can appear some difficulties in that near future. I don't know the time. 5 minutes? Okay, perfect. My studies, I did my studies here in this center, in this university, and I studied to be a librarian. I'm not a librarian, as you can see, but I always like to provide with some documentation related to we are talking about for all of you who wants to go a little bit deep in this issue, quality assurance and e-learning. Quality assurance with e-learning. I mean, something merged. There is a document. It's previous. Previous from the pandemic. Considerations of quality assurance of e-learning provision by ENQA. ENQA is the European Network of Quality Assurance Agencies. That says something that we go back to something that we said before. This paper says, although each standard proved to be fully applicable to e-learning, the 10 standards that I said previously, some of standards seem to require special guidance on how can they be applied. Okay, so if you want to go deep a little bit in this aspect, I recommend you this document, because it provides this special guidance of how to apply standards, quality standards in the new context of e-learning. Okay, I insist, this is pre-pandemia. Post-pandemia or during pandemia, let's say, the amount of documents and papers and articles it's been wide. You know, it's very big. I made a selection of them, and I think that it's very helpful. It's very interesting to consult that one from the QAA. QAA is the Quality Assurance Agency in the United Kingdom, and they have quite interesting documents. This one is composed by lots of questions. Here there are some of these questions, but there are hundreds of these questions that we can ask ourselves to try to do this change appropriately and maintaining all the quality aspects. The aspects that I put in the slide are aspects related to the student-centered learning, okay, and say things like how has best practices regarding digital teaching and learning informed in the design of the sessions of the courses? Has co-creation of teaching and learning resources between academics and students been considered? How will digital sessions and materials support and encourage independent study and flexibility in time and place of a study? Student feedback to inform future interactions of the program, etc. It really go very deep in all the considerations that we have to have when we have to transform our studies or to design a digital training activity, for instance, etc. Other interesting document is that one from the EUA, European Universities Association. They did a wide study between European institutions and universities. Says some interesting things. They say Northern Europe, almost 70% of institutions consider digital learning in their internal quality assurance processes. In Southern Europe is 40%. Okay, so it's less. It's interesting to to say that they say almost a third of responding institutions from Spain reported that external quality assurance as a major barrier to digital education, learning and training in their institution. So, okay, we can do things better. I will stop here. Just my last slide. The same document, they say enablers, barriers, usual measures to do this change, to adopt digital lineage learning. One of them is a change and collaboration organized by university networks. It's something that we are doing today, so I think that it's important to say that we are trying. Okay. That's all. There are a little bit more bibliography, but you can consult that for sure. I suppose this will be online for all of you. This is the same question that I said at the beginning. So thank you very much. And I'm disposed for any question that you would have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert. I like your approach about making some questions also to the audience. I don't know if you want to answer something now, or we will collect all these questions at the end for the discussion, okay? So now we will, well, we will change the place, because now Anna Magre from La Factoria, from the Universitat Pompeu Fabra Library, is going to explain us also the responding and learning from unexpected situation, La Factoria at the UPF Library in hard times. So now we will have the perspective of an academic libraries that we were speaking before, also how they support to teachers and all this educational environment in these hard times in pandemic crisis. So Anna, are you ready? Yes. Yeah, okay, so thank you.
Está apagado. Okay, it was closed, so sorry. So starting again, thank you very much, Jem and Cristobal, for inviting me to share experiences with all of you. Let me start explaining very briefly some facts about the Universitat Pompeu Fabra, which, as you probably know, is a very young university. It was founded in 1990, so we are just 31 years old. As you can see in this image, we are an urban campus with our sites pretty close to each other in the middle of the city and almost by the sea. As you, the Ciutadella campus is the big one, the biggest one, is devoted to economics, humanities, political science and law. The Poblenou campus is specialized in communication, engineering and translation and languages. And we have a smaller campus, that's Mar campus, and it's devoted to health and life sciences. It basically means that we are a community of 10,500 undergraduate students and 2,500 postgraduate students, just to see a little bit the size of the university. The digital transformation at the UPF is especially concerned with three aspects. The first one, it's the implementation of cloud technologies, especially in software as service mode that increase, as you know, flexibility, availability, and make payment for use. The second is the use of technologies aimed at facilitating the mobility of users. My Apps is a platform in the cloud that allows students to access the applications they need without having them installed in their device. So they can move around, so they can use all these programs from any device, anywhere, and at any time. It was very important for the lockdown. And the third, and I would say, I think that perhaps it's the most important, because it's the organization of services, the front office that we call. I think that is crucial of making, in making technology innovation reach all groups in the university and responding to the situation such as the one we have experienced, all this in pandemic. In this case, the setting up of La Factoria was one of the results of the confluence of the library and the IT services under a common vice management. So we work together. So La Factoria means factory in English. I suppose you know, and it's a unit devoted to give support to learning, the LMS, the learning management system that we call Aula Global, audiovisual production, web services, and recently that we were talking just before the pandemic, the Center for Learning, Innovation and Knowledge. That's a little bit different because there is an academic director, but we work coordinated and together. This implied for us in the university a redefinition of our services, and besides librarians, because we are just a Factoria, it's a service in the library, besides librarians, meant the inclusion of new profiles, such as IT staff, of course, because of the that we are working together, but also audiovisual producers, graphic designers, and pedagogues. Well, La Factoria Aula Global that we call, that is the LMS, will give support to our virtual cloud teaching platform that is OpenLMS, that is Moodle, and also all the IT tools for teaching, that for our teaching our professors. In addition of that, that we were talking, it's also to providing support to the creation of teaching materials, review copyright issues and advice on how and where to publish them. So this is a bit, and it's very rich because we work librarians with all these profiles, and we are doing all the projects together from the beginning. That's very important for us. And how we are organized. We are organized, La Factoria has two dimensions. One is the technical team, and the other, it's a front office in each library, in the 3 campuses. So to make sure that there is proximity to the end user, and it's managed by specialized librarians. In the libraries, in each campus, there are some specialized librarians that give support on the Aula Global for all the teachers. And of course, during the pandemic, one of the first things we did, given the sudden high number of inquiries, was to activate a second telephone line. So we always have 3 channels, 3 lines. We have the attention for our users face-to-face, telephone, and virtual. But during the pandemic, so we had a second line of telephone, and also we activate a video conferencing room to attend more personalized inquiries. This was a success, absolutely, because it was very useful for all the teachers. Since our structure is quite flexible, so it was possible to give priority to the tasks of attention for our teachers. So we could prioritize all the tasks of these librarians helping the teachers. And we could offer open advice on request all day long. During the lockdown, maybe we can share some information. We developed an intense distance training to meet demands of the unexpected situation. So they were programmed according to the needs of the teaching and also always trying to anticipate their needs. We organized multiple webinars during the first months, and we also consultation webinars that they had a lot of success. And in fact, that it is a fact really that teachers responded to the webinars. We had almost 200 participants in each webinar, while before the pandemic, the lockdown, were less than 20. We could say 10 at least or something like that. So it was a big success because of course they needed this help. Well, in my view, one of the most useful was the Factoria. So was always having these frequently asked questions, and we realized some very short audiovisuals for the professors with the answers to these frequent asked questions. So this, I think, was very useful for us to help teachers and also for themselves. And one of, I'm explaining some activities that we did during the pandemic, and one of the most interesting initiatives is what we call Acompanyat. Acompanyat is a word play in Catalan that suggests something like come with and be in good company of colleagues. And is a series also of short videos in which teachers from different fields would share their experiences in those circumstances for the whole community. One series was focused on digital tools. There were 10 videos for each series, and another more on learning methodologies. And now we are finishing the third series on evaluation possibilities and so on. I think that really helped to create this new culture of collaboration and sharing experiences, and was easier when was one teacher to the other explaining their experiences. So that helped us also to give examples and tools and guides, but also this direct help to the teachers. So all these actions and recordings were collected on a website that was for online teaching and evaluation on that moment on the lockdown. And now currently it has been transformed into a website on blended teaching that will have all these informations. And then Gemma asked us for lessons, some lessons, and I will tell you some ones, and then we can follow up and share some more. The first one, it's really the first lesson that we learned is that it's worthwhile to have a flexible and a scalable organizational structure that can respond to emergencies. And like the one we have experienced. So I think we were prepared. We had in the UPF, we had the basics for it. We had La Factoria, and that moment I think had been surely had been a key factor when facing the situation for all the community. And as all we know, and I think some people already said, so these services are basic to bring technology closer to the user. So we have a lot of tools that changing very quickly. So we need some help, people that can explain us how to use them, why, when, and all this information. And fortunately, I think that in emergencies, most of those involved respond with a very positive and engaged attitude to save the situation. I think this is what we did. And a little bit Albert was saying that we could resist all this pandemic. And I think that we all participated in that. Teachers, support staff, and students also. Was so difficult. I won't belong on that, but was very difficult for them also. And I think they did an effort in following, teaching, and learning, all that. Also, in extreme situations, extreme situations create new dynamics. As we said, the situation forced a boost in digital competence by most teachers. It really was the moment that they were obliged, where it was a compulsory for them to learn, because they had to do this teaching online. And we think that there has been improvement also. There has been improvement using these digital tools to enhance and reinforce learner autonomy and attention to student diversity. So teachers have become more used to supply more materials in different formats for a student. That it's very useful for all the students that have different skills. So these complementary materials, these sharing materials that we in the platform, in Aula Global, in this case, I think it was now a culture that you can help with students that they want more, or they need different formats of materials. And so the emergency situation favored relevant new pedagogical practices. And we think that teachers, we observe now in La Factoria that teachers have selected the pedagogical tools and methodologies used during the emergency and have kept the ones they feel they add value in their classroom practice. For example, because it has made the class management easier. Sending tasks via the LMS, Aula Global, instead of getting lots of individual mails. So it gets the management of the class, it's much easier. Or the use of assessment questionnaires that are for correction, and it's easier for the correction. So they discover that they can use this kind of questionnaires, and it's much easier for them. And also they can keep some questions from one year to the other. So they have much more advantages that most of them didn't know. And exams online are now perceived as sustainable way to save paper, lots of paper. Some of the things we can reuse the videos that we did during the pandemic. We can record our classes, class recording in the hybrid classrooms. And for instance, as a support services in La Factoria, we kept the video conference room to attend inquiries. It was very successful, and we keep this via to attend our users. And finally, the experience has accelerated the implementation of a new educational framework that we were working 4 years ago, but now that we are just moving fastly to implement it, and that we call evolution. In fact, evolution, it's structured in 6 key topics, and it's UPF identity, the role of the teacher, student support, learning architecture, spaces and resources, and also teaching formats. So we had during 4 years working in team groups and creating documents on what our teachers, students, staff, support staff think and want to make this change. And now we are moving faster to implement this new framework to our university. So Gemma, all in all these hard times, these were hard times that we were saying, but hopefully also useful times for the future of our universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for explaining all of this. I have take some notes, and I really like to say that I will summarize your intervention, your contribution with 3-4 words: availability of your staff, that was always there; diversity of formats, you say also, and also this kind of evolution framework that was also very, very interesting. So we can keep this in mind for the later discussion. Thank you very much. And now the third participant is online. So I will introduce, now is the turn of Ebba Ossiannilsson. She's chair of the International Council for Open and Distant Education. And she's here online to speak about a global outlook, the situation and use of open educational resources during the pandemic COVID, and the role of UNESCO OER Recommendation. So are you here, Ebba? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here with you. Can you hear me as well?
Hello? Okay.
Can you hear me as well?
Like a problem with the voice, but she's here. I can see her on the screen. They are solving the problem. Okay. Hold on, Ebba.
Yes, I will.
Now we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Bit.
Fine. So I'm sorry.
Hold on. Okay, now it's perfect. Thank you. Ebba. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm greeting you from Sweden. And it's a pleasure for me to have been invited by you, Gemma Santos. It's very nice to be together with you. And I understand that you have had a very successful conference for your project. So congratulations for that.
Thank you very much. And thank you for accepting our invitation and to explain us what you are working from your institution during the COVID and the OERs. Thank you.
Yes. So I will share with you some of my experiences during this time, and especially related to OER and the recommendation, and something about moving forward. I know also that we have Eleni Boursinou from UNESCO here, so she will, of course, talk very much more about the OER recommendation. So I'm happy to be here together with her as well. So yes, I am the chair of the OER ICD OER Advocacy Committee, and I've been that for the 3 years as it has been launched in 2017, and we are now in our third mandate period. We are working with advocacy for ICD. ICD is the International Council for Open and Distance Education. And OER and the open education is, of course, one of our priorities in our strategy. So we're working, and I'm also in the ICD board. We have ambassadors from all over the world, from all the regions, and we are in total 12 ambassadors meeting once a month, and we do a lot of advocacy together. And right now, ICD has started an advocacy campaign, and we would be one of the first committees who will run this campaign for OER. Yes, we all know what happened with the COVID-19. The map of the world looked like this. And of course, that has made a lot of consequences. And I know that you have been discussing that during your conference. And the main lessons, although how terrible the situation was, there was a big move towards open and online learning, and also a changed paradigm for education and for learning, and not at least to see the student and the learner in the center, not just the offering from universities or educational institutions. And of course, that is very good, and we need to very much and strongly take on those lessons and work together how we can move forward. But even before the pandemic, we had some initiatives which was important, and of course the SDGs, and also of course, as I have in my background wall, the Futures of Education by UNESCO, Learning to Become. And that is also about seeing the learner in the center, to advocate for and to move forward, that the learner is in the center to become what they would like to become. And moving forward to OER somewhat more, the recommendation was adopted anonymously in 2019, and it was an important step to reach the SDGs, because it is said that this is working with open education and OER is the only way to achieve the SDG 4, education for all, quality education for all. So that's why this recommendation is so important. And there are a lot of measurement how we can work together to implement it, not just to talk the talk, but really to walk the talk. Just you have set the settings, but know that you know it. There was a new definition about OER. There was also a redefined definition about open licensing, and the road to achieve this is about to increase information and communication technology. And what is maybe it's important is that there's a range, broad variety of stakeholders. It is really not just a question for the teachers. It is for all staff in an institution. It is also for parents, for students, for policymakers, for cultural institutions, librarians, museums, and there need to be infrastructure. So that is maybe not new, but it is really stressed in the recommendation. And the recommendation is about those 5 areas. It is about building capacity of stakeholders to create, access, reuse, adapt, and redistribute OER, about developing supportive policies, about encouraging effective, inclusive, and equitable access to quality OER, nurturing the creation of sustainability models for OER, and actually the 5th one about international cooperation has an impact on all the 4 other ones. So actually, although it is an own area, it is embedded in all the 4 others. And added to that is about monitoring and evaluation, how to make evidence and how to see its impact. And we all know that OER are built on those 5 R permissions. First, maybe first described by David Willey, about retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. And it is built on Creative Commons and all the licenses we have with that. But I would like to add maybe 2 other R, and that is about recognition. Recognition about both of using OER, but also, of course, producing. And when I mean using, it's not just to use it, it's also to really use those 5 R's. And it's also very much about recontextualize, to adapt to your own country, to your own region, in your own language. Because learning materials is so much more than the resources as such. And we all know, unfortunately, that many of, or most of the OERs are in English, and that not always makes sense to all the people out there. And it's not just a question about translating, it is a question about to adapt it to the culture, to the context, to the tradition, history, etc. of the country or the region. I gathered together, as well as the previous speaker, a lot of resources if you would like to read more about this recommendation, and also the dynamic coalition. And I'm sure that Eleni will talk more about that, but I think always it's good to have the resources. And we know also that it took rather a long time to get those recommendations adopted. And what I have heard was they were adopted with no changes at all. So it has been a really long process. So here are some more links about that. So UNESCO, I will say that UNESCO did a lot due to the pandemic, and they put a lot of resources together, and they had a campaign about learning never stops. And they also state that the COVID-19 crisis has, of course, resulted in a paradigm shift on how learners in all ages worldwide can access learning, as we saw from the map in the beginning. So, for example, they had this call. Actually, I prepared those slides before I knew that Eleni was going to join us. So maybe there are some overlapping, because UNESCO has done a great job. And I think it's really important to use those resources and to also disseminate it, what they have done. So they had a call about how OER could be one resort to help institutions and learners coming over the crisis, not coming over, but to adapt to the crisis we had faced in the outbreak of COVID-19. Here are some other examples, like UNESCO supports member states, specifically on OER, to build crisis resilient learning system, about another one about post-pandemic learning, exploring sustainable open education resources, business models. And as you remember, business models was one of the areas in the recommendation as well. To support joint OER statements, guidance on open education practices, because it is very much about open education practices, not the resources as such is enough. It is about the practices, because it is about human rights and social justice for the people. And the practice and the culture is very important for implementation. And also COVID-19 as a catalyst for greater OER use worldwide. So you see there is a lot of support from UNESCO, how we all can adapt and implement the OER recommendation. Another initiative is this one, which was quite early during the pandemic, about guidance on open educational practices. As I said, practices and culture, or maybe likewise important as the resources as such. Also, OECD did a lot during the pandemic for building a resilient recovery. Of course, you cannot easily recover, but you can try to adapt and to be resilient and to learn the lessons. For example, one resource is about lessons for education from COVID-19, and the three main lessons, maybe those three, which are on your right side, about learning is a relational social process. And we saw that very much from the COVID period, that it's not just about exams, degrees, content, lessons, videos, or whatever. It is about really a social processes, because it is about people and people who are in a learning stage and learning together. Education systems are not too heavy to move, and deep global disruption emphasizes the need for greater learning. So 3 lessons from their side, from OECD. It's about education's actors should nurture resilient mindsets that value people and processes over classroom and devices. I think we all have seen that very explicitly in our countries. And again, as I said, it is so much more than the classroom and devices and the content and the degrees and assessment, etc. Lesson 2, educators need new skills and new knowledge to capitalize on new education priorities. So we really have to rethink what education is about, and really learn about those important questions: why, what, when, who, whom. And lesson number 3, addressing learning gaps will minimize disruption in students' educational journeys. And we all know also, although this was a historic crisis, there will come crisis after this one. Maybe other diseases, maybe earthquakes, maybe migration, maybe fires, maybe floods. So we need to be prepared and adapt, but not just that, but to be proactive. I will now come over to some global research, which I have been involved in during this period. One is from the ICD OER Advocacy Committee, where we at an early stage in the pandemic, and also when the recommendations were quite new. We did a global research about how the recommendation was received in the countries, and you see we reached quite many countries and almost all regions. The respondents were individuals, so they were not always having an official or the mandate to say what they said, but it gave us an overview how it was, and all respondents confirmed that the culture of sharing and the use of OER and the implementation of the OER had increased very quickly due to the pandemic. By the way, this report is translated into several languages, as we have, as I said, we have members in the Advocacy Committee from all over the region, so we took the opportunity to translate in those languages which we had ambassadors from. And actually, this was also discussed with UNESCO, with Seymour Bourgeois, also from the beginning. Another research was about from Aras Buskert, who was the research leader. We did a research from 31 countries across the world. And here again, you have a map of the countries involved. So we reached 62.7% of the whole world population, the area. So some findings were about trauma and psychological press, of course, emerging educational roles of the parents and schools. So the parents were much more involved in the education than before, or it was more visible. Support communities and mechanisms had to be in place and was crucial. Pedagogy of care and trauma-informed pedagogy became important. Surveillance, ethics, and data privacy concerns. Of course, the digital divide was a big issue. It was also shown that essential soft skills and digital competencies were very crucial. And of course, the areas of inequity, inequality, and social justice became very explicit, and there were huge varieties there, of course. But not at least the openness and sharing culture and open education had increased in all the countries surveyed. So in summary, you can say that it was about social issues, pedagogical challenges, harnessing technology, and also psychological dimensions was very explicit. So actually, the COVID, or maybe you can say that although how terrible the COVID-19 was, it was some kind of benefits as well, because in fact, it exposed and surfaced already existing problems, because the problems were not due to the COVID. The problem existed already, but maybe we were not always aware of it. Maybe we were aware of it, but maybe we didn't try to solve it. So I think that is important to remember. Already exposed and surfaced problems became very, very explicit, and all the gaps which already were there became explicit. Another study is about also again a global study on open education and open science. Here we reached 13 countries, and you were involved here as well, Gemma. We have disseminated, of course, both studies, which are all three studies, which I have been talking about at different conferences and also different journals, scientific journals, and we have got a lot of response from that. It has been shown very explicit and obvious that we had an emerging landscape. For example, the MOOCs and the students doing MOOCs really increased during the pandemic very, very quickly. And I have heard the speakers already were saying that there were a lot of increased use of videos, for example, and the range of new and online courses was developed, the increase of use of OER. So this is some kind of summary, what we have seen. The culture of sharing, which I've talked about, the issue of collaboration, the culture aspects has become very explicit. And that education is so much about trust, empathy, respect, and well-being. And that there need to be an infrastructure and a very, very strong leadership. And the leaders and leadership who have encouraged enough to lead in an uncertain time, because we are in an uncertain time and will be in an uncertain time forward. And we also need to rethink teaching and learning, and we need to adapt resilience in all means. Then I will go back to the founders of distance education and e-learning, and that is one of them is Weidemeyer, already from 1973, because his theory and ideas about the openness is very much what we are talking about now. And that is quite interesting because we are some, 45, 50 years ahead. But he was very much a pioneer talking about an open channels, diversity in media, diversity in learning materials, an open access, open participation, open accreditation, and also open qualifications maybe, and also very much seeing the learner in the center, taking the learner's perspective in all means. If you haven't read it, I can really recommend it because he discussed exactly what we are discussing in our field right now. Another one is Börje Holmberg. Actually, he's from Sweden, as you may know, and he was also a very good friend of mine. I used to meet him once a month to discuss very much with him, and he developed the empathic approach. And that is also very much what we, not at least due to the pandemic, has faced, that we need to have empathic pedagogy, empathic approaches. We need to think about ethical aspects, etc. And this is what he is saying. And also the importance of lifelong and learning throughout the lifespan was guiding principles for him. Sometimes, even if we have to go forward, sometimes we have to go back to the roots. The Horizon report from 21 also have some kind of other directions for us, and they're not just talking about education as such, but talking about education in a context of about social aspects, technological aspects, economic aspects, and environmental and political aspects, and what we can learn and how it make a difference with education. Another recent report actually came to just a few days ago. It's about workplace learning trend report. And that is also another thing which have to be changed, and not at least to the COVID-19, because it is really about what is learning about, what is education about, and there need to be stronger partnerships with the society, with the working places. And here are their trends. It is actually in 3 chapters about power skills, because employers need to have communication skills, problem-solving skills, leadership and management, personal development, and wellness is very much stressed. Another is about tactical skills. The third one is about technical skills. And it is important to see how does those different kind of skills or competencies, how are they reflected in our educational system and in our curricula, and not at least in our assessment. And I used to say, as long as we don't change the assessments, nothing will change. So how are those areas, for example, embedded in our assessments? And of course, in the curricula, in the content, in the learning environments. So how can we support innovation with and to OER? First, I would like to say that we need to do it in all kind of levels. Macro level, of course, global, at national level, but also at the institutional level, and of course in the country as well, but also in the macro level about the curricula, the course, the module, the program, whatever we have, but also at nano level, the human level, because nothing can change without us, without the humans, however kind of nice strategies or visions or what we have, because change is made by people and for people. So how can we support? Of course, it is important to look back to the recommendations as well, but it's much more than awareness raising. We really need to take action and to empower individuals and to encourage experimentation in pedagogy and practice, and to develop critical learning cultures, and to think and act at the level of the ecosystem. Because when we talk about OER, it is very much about an ecosystem. It is not just by the courses, as the content as such, or open textbooks or whatever. It is the whole ecosystem. And very important, how to power the power of networks. I will take the opportunity to briefly mention the Encore Plus project, a project which is coordinated by ICDE, which take on many of those challenges on OER, and it is a European project, and it is new in many aspects because it is both for education and business and innovation. We are running webinars frequently, and it is about those 4 circles. So please look at the webpage, and please be involved if you find it of interest. I think this slide is not about reading all the text. It is the main issues is, why is open education important? It is important because, as I said in the beginning, it's the only way to reach and achieve the SDG 4. And it is about open to people, open to places, open as methods, and open to ideas. And then, of course, we have a lot of principles and a lot of statements why it is important. And also, we like to address that let's make this journey together for a changed quality agenda, because that is also an issue which needs to be changed. And also, if we are really implementing the OER recommendation, you remember one of the slides I had also monitoring and evaluation. So we also need from now on what we are doing to monitor and evaluate the recommendation in these perspectives. So with that, I will start, and I will be very happy to take a response and reflections. And maybe I have also one question for you, and that is, what can you do? What can your institution do? Because change is made by people, it's changed by you and me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, and thank you for launching this question that we will speak later on the discussion. So we invite you to remain until the end, because we will speak about this and we will try to answer your question as well. Thank you for this complete overview of initiatives and guidance documents, and also to tell us about this Horizon report, recent Horizon report from DECriS, because it seems to be like very useful, speaking about treating about skills that we have been speaking here in this table, and this is something that we also speak later in the discussion. So now we will, thank you very much, and we will speak with the next speaker. In this case is Joan-Tomàs Pujolà from the Institute, International Council of Open and, Institute for Professional Development, ICE, from the University of Barcelona. And he will explain us about teacher training in emergency remote teaching during the lockdown at the UB. So it's, now we need also your perspective to complete all this puzzle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Sylvia and Gemma asked me to take part, and thank you to be here. I'm learning quite a lot, because I'm a little bit away from all the areas that you presented, but I think I can, as you said, I can contribute my bit in the teacher training part, and telling my experience, my personal experience as well. And I'll tell you what we did at the University of Barcelona. The Institute of Teacher Development is a center that helped in the training during the lockdown, together with CRI, that is the Learning and Research Center, that is part of what the factory is, but in the University of Barcelona, we are divided into different type of centers. So I'm devoted more on the part of the teacher training in courses, webinars, and on all that, and not on the open resources, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. Okay. You see, I hate to talk about COVID-19, so I'll try to avoid it. And I hate to talk about pandemic, so I'll try to avoid it. But we cannot avoid the lockdown. And the lockdown, it was what happened to us with all this situation. And what forced these a crisis, it was that lockdown. I divided my presentation and this intervention in 5 parts. To start with a little bit of the context, what happened, where we were at that time, the training program that we organized in the Institute for Professional Development at the UB. Then I'm sure you pay attention that I'm not talking about online learning or e-learning. I'm talking about emergency remote teaching. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about this difference, because I think we have to distinguish these 2 concepts. And it's important, and we cannot mix, because the results that we are taking from this situation can be useful for the online learning, but we were not doing online learning, and that's one important part. And then lessons learned, as you asked, Gemma and Sylvia, and that will be more than my personal stance and perspective in that. And now, what is future time? So let's start with the context. And the context is for us it was an unknown territory, because we were a face-to-face university. So we faced quickly with something that it says, wow, move to e-learning, move to online learning right now, right there. And it was an unknown territory. And believe me or not, some previous interventions were a little bit positive, even in the morning. And I think we have to see the picture in a more realistic way. They were positive, but it was a lot of resistance to that change. And we have to tell about that as well. So it was not easy. People who were really prepared for this change are teachers that were very flexible and they were previously attending to these webinars, and the few people but there was a lot of resistance as well to that change, and there were a lot of roller coasters of emotions. And you know, the last intervention of Ebba talk about it. It's important that part of the emotion and the emotional part. And I think we could, in the surveys, we should as well ask that part of the emotions, because sometimes they prevent it to apply a lot of new methodologies and new technical stuff. And of course, we had to update our technologies, our Wi-Fi's in our houses, and the computers that were absolute, or all this. So we had to do a lot of effort to adapt, and we have to see that picture, and we saw that picture immediately, and we thought, well, is that a mission impossible? Is that how we're going to approach that? At the very beginning, I thought that in our unit, we were a little bit late to react, but I think we had time to think a little bit, because we basically picture the situation, and then we started. And sometimes there were some reactions, so quick reaction, without that planning and that thinking. So I'm going to tell you about what we did. That was the situation, that was the context that we had, and I'm sure you more or less agree, because we all suffer that. I'm a teacher trainer, so I'm in both sides, and I suffer as a teacher and as a teacher trainer what happened. So what we planned, and we started in April, we opened this website where we had all the resources, and we divided in 3 different parts. One, it was the webinars, and this is what I'm going to talk about, basically, that part of the webinars. Then some resources and OERs and all the resources from other universities, using universities from the UPF, or even the Open University of Catalunya, who had more experience than us in order to deliver online courses and online stuff. And as well, one part of more devoted to tools, digital tools, but taking it from, all these resources. And here the CRI, the Learning and Research Resources Center, also produce some helpful material at the same time that we were doing all these webinars. So I'm going to concentrate on the webinars. And during the lockdown, we did approximately 14 webinars, but 4 and plus 4, what I call it post-lockdown. I think we are not in the normal. They call it new normal, but we are not still there. And then one day seminar at the end that I'm going to talk about. And as Anna was saying, in the UPF, our courses, webinars, few teachers attended, and that was an explosion in the lockdown. And most of the webinars that we limited to 250, but they were enrolling 300, 350 that some people could not attend. Then all these were recorded, and those are available and open to not only to the UB community, but to the world, if you can say. So as you see, we started on the 20th of April after Easter, because Easter was at the beginning. And so we spent a month without any training whatsoever. It was more resources, and we started the training then and there, because we tried to assess the situation. And we reached all this till September this year. So I divided more or less the webinars kind of, 4 topics. And as you see, the first webinar, it was about assessment in online. Teachers were extremely worried on how to assess their students in the lockdown, extremely. And what happened is that we try to help them to find different ways of assessment from exams. And that was the first part of the webinar. But if you see the other ones, it's in Catalan, but I'm going to tell you webinar 4, webinar 5, webinar 6, and webinar 7 are devoted to exams, basically, to how to deal with exams on Moodle, how to deal with exams, because because teachers didn't move to that new way of assessing. They kept wanting to do or replicate their way of assessing, and that's what they need. Our center, what they did is try to cover the needs of that moment, of that emergency remote teaching that students had. And now we are moving, as the last seminar, in trying to help teachers to move away from exams and do other things than that. The second type of webinars, webinar 2, 8, 9, and 10, they were more devoted to how to adapt to online teaching. With all these methodologies, new methodologies, open methodologies, active methodologies, and how to manage all this stress and all this situation. The other set of webinars were devoted more to the video conferencing tools. The University of Barcelona had first Blackboard Collaborate, and that was mainly the one that we used during the pandemic, and in the post-pandemic, they moved to Zoom. So now we are using Zoom. So we needed some knowledge or information about how to use all these systems, not only how to use all these systems technically, but pedagogically. And that was one of the most difficult things to achieve. As well, collaborative tools, because we have Teams and Microsoft Office 365 or 365. That they are used internally for teachers to collaborate and do all these internal meetings and all that. And the last part was a webinar, and here there were the post-pandemic, what I call the post-pandemic webinars, where the University of Barcelona and the center that I'm working in, the institute, they are trying to certificate and to do a program on developing the digital competencies for teachers, and that was previously already organized, but the pandemic did kind of the force to go quickly in that respect. And the last two seminars or webinars online we're in the post-pandemic part, how to voice techniques when we have to teach with a mask in class and all the problems that we could have. And as well, there was a day seminar as well, or a webinar to talk about active learning and active methodologies. So this is a kind of broad picture of what we did in this little time I have, and now I'm going to tell you about some of the perceptions I have, and some teachers here probably you suffer this and you saw this. So this is how I see it. I think there's a spectrum of teachers, and what we found is that teachers that they had previously used active teaching and learner-centered approaches, or use technology in their face-to-face classes, or had some online teaching experience, had fewer difficulties. And I'm saying or and, because it could be and really, and one of the most thing is that they use assessment procedures other than exams. And that was one of the important part of that adaptation. And there teachers that had more difficulties use more traditional approaches to the teaching, and it's true that still there are teachers that they do more frontal type of classes, and what the pandemic and the lockdown did is put that more explicitly. We know that existed, but put that, and it shows clearly what was happening in the classrooms. And of course, as well, they had more difficulties when they had to use exams. We at the University of Barcelona, we didn't have proctoring software. So, and even having proctoring software is very difficult to guarantee 100% of, that the students do their own exams. So what they had is that the problem is most or some teachers wanted to replicate their face-to-face classes, the face-to-face teaching, without considering the affordances of the online teaching. And that's what happened. I like this image a lot. You see, this is the emergency remote teaching we experience that is not the same as online teaching and learning. And if we are going to do surveys, we cannot, mix this, because I think it's the concept is completely different. And fine, we can talk about this remote teaching. And now what we can do is see how experiences this is moving in what sort of online teaching from now on. And this is how we started or push in our training, or try to make them understand all the time. In my case, lessons learned, we can see that some teachers learn to take advantage of these affordances and possibilities of the online format. But you see, the effort that we put in the training programs to change their teaching strategies a little bit, to adapt to the situation, to the emergency, does not entail that they have changed their teaching methods. Some teachers have come back, now that they have come back to the F2F, to the face-to-face. So we have to think about what can we do in those cases. And although this crisis helped most teachers to improve their digital competence, they were, you said, boost to force them to learn quickly and develop these digital competencies. There is still need to develop that competence. There's still a lot of need to do that. From the UNIT perspective, from our institute, teachers look for training when they feel the need. That's how we had 20 people on the webinars. Online teachers training in the form of webinars help increase the teacher attendance. As you see, webinars were, in our case, were recorded for further consultation as similar to OERs, and there has been, and that's true, there has been an increase of information sharing between different training units from different universities, the University of Girona, the Pompeu, and all that. And for me, to conclude, I would say the teacher training at UB in the lockdown was constantly adapting. I think we had the problem as we had all this feedback from teachers, and then we adapt and provided these new webinars that cater teachers' needs, and then of course change the content and the format of the training. The online teacher training for us, we were doing most of the time face-to-face. Only few cases we were doing some webinars. So for now on, and with this crisis, has opened up new avenues of exploration. And as I said, I think the emergency remote teaching we experience should help teachers, as Ebba was saying, to rethink their teaching methods and explore different formats. And now what? And now what's happening? Are we going back to face-to-face? We are a face-to-face university, but are we going to continue, or are we going to move to other formats in this teaching spectrum of face-to-face and online? And do it not in a rush, not pressured, but do it, preparing and planning nicely. I think in our case, in our training should help teachers to find new ideas, to fish new ideas, and share those effective teaching practices. And this is how we are going to do it, and do it online. Online teacher training at the UB is here to stay, and I think we are going to learn on this experience. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joan-Tomàs, for your fresh contribution and very enthusiastic. And yeah, you're right. You introduced a new idea in this equation, the difference between remote and online education. This is also important that we can also keep in mind for the discussion, because it's interesting. And also the webinars that you explained us, that they were online and some of them face-to-face, that they become OER. So this is also interesting. Yeah. And the fishing idea of the end, I really like this. Thank you very much. Now we will present our last speaker, which is online. Yep. Okay, so we welcome also to Eleni Boursinou. She's a consultant in digital innovation and transformation section in the UNESCO, and she will explain us the OER recommendations, the UNESCO OER recommendations, and hopefully also the impact or some kind of evidence that they have, if they have this evidence from the UNESCO to tell us how is going on and what can we do in the future. Thank you, Eleni. It's your turn. You can speak. Thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me?
The screen, we can hear you, Eleni, but we can see your screen.
Okay, there is some problem with my...
Wait, don't worry. We are seeing your avatar, your name on the screen, but not your screen. I don't know if it's not working. This option, share the screen, yet now?
No, I see it, but I have a. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having a problem with that.
You have permissions for...
Yes, it's not the problem is not with the permission. I'm sorry, it is with the browser. It says that something is... I'm sorry for the glitch.
Don't worry, we are patient.
And it will not take long because Ebba already covered many of the things that I wanted to discuss with you. So I'll try to be very brief and not waste your time. I'm sorry.
Do you have the presentation on your laptop or maybe?
Yes, everything is there, but I cannot. Now the enabler thing is not working.
Well, in the meanwhile, maybe you can. Now we can see the presentation. No, okay. No, it was. Okay, so in the meanwhile, maybe you can explain us a little bit your perceptions, and also as you are
Yes.
used to explain these kind of things to your audience, I'm sure that you can also explain
Yes.
us PowerPoint in the meanwhile that you are looking for this or trying to solve the situation. If you don't mind.
Yes. Is it okay? Is it okay if I just talk like this without the presentation and share it with you later?
Yeah, of course.
Not to waste the time. I'm really sorry for this.
I was proposing this. Yeah, of course. Welcome. You can share your experience like this, speaking with us.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for inviting me and for representing UNESCO and the OER recommendation. I don't know how many of you are aware of the OER recommendation and the OER dynamic coalition in the room. I mean, apart Gemma, who is very active, but I don't know. You are all stakeholders that should be involved: teachers, teacher trainings, librarians, all should be involved in the OER dynamic coalition. I'm going to present, I'm going to talk to you about this. So the OER recommendation, a bit of background, show its birth in November 2019, just before the pandemic. And it actually is the only normative instrument in ICT in education. So it is the first one, and for now the only one. It is very, very important to highlight it because 193 member states actually unanimously signed and agreed that they are going to adopt the UNESCO OER recommendation. So what is this all about? So the OER recommendation defined OER as everything that is related to learning, teaching, and research materials in any format and medium that reside in the public domain or are under copyright, that have been released under an open license, and that permit no-cost access, reuse, repurpose, adaptation, and redistribution by others. The open license, what it is, it refers to a license that respects the intellectual property rights of the copyright owner and provides permissions granting the public the rights to access, reuse, repurpose, adapt, and redistribute educational materials. There are 5 main areas, action areas of the recommendation. The first one is capacity building. The second one is quality, multilingual, and inclusive OER. Sustainability, the third. Fourth is policy, and the fifth is international cooperation. So capacity building might sound a bit of jargon, but what it is exactly, it is teachers training in a way. It is how to raise awareness about OER, and all stakeholders involved should understand the added value of OER and have the capacity to create, access, reuse, and redistribute OER. Because the first question that teachers ask is, okay, and how do I do it? How does it happen? Then, in order to have quality OER, OER should be available in all languages, not only English, as it is mainly now. And OER should also be accessible to persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups. sustainability is something that calls a lot of action on models and incentives for stakeholders to use OER. And policy comes on a higher level to member states, governments, and institutions with guidelines, standards, and documents at national and institutional level to stimulate creation, access, repurposing, and redistribution of quality OER. At the same time, policy should include incentives for teachers' professional development to use and create OER. The fifth area of action is the international cooperation, and that is what everybody is saying until now, that it takes a village to get things done, and we need cooperation in interinstitutional, interregional, and sectoral in all fields to have things done and move how it works. So the action plan, we started with mainly launching the OER Dynamic Coalition in March 2020, and everything that is related to support the recommendation and the collaboration. So since March 2020, we tried to involve as many stakeholders as possible. We have 70 UNESCO member states in board already as members, 57% representatives of educational and information institutions, civil society organizations, and IGOs, and 42% representatives of UNESCO commissions, ministries of education, and ministries of communication and information. So what we have been doing since March 2020, we are doing many webinars for all areas of action of the OER Dynamic Coalition, and also to celebrate international days like the World Book and Copyright Day, the Teachers' Day, International Education Day. And we are trying to get on board as many people as possible. We are also running a project that is about capacity building and multilingualism with Francophone African countries. One of the first big consultations we had was to do a mapping of all the courses that create OER and how to do OER that are online and offline, and make a sort of database where if someone is searching to find an available course on how to do OER in Spanish, he can filter and find the information needed. So, I mean, in this consultation, what was really what came up after the results and the database was finished was that there is a serious lack of resources in languages other than English. So we are trying to support that by translating courses that already exist in one language to another language. So, for example, we supported the development of the LIDA course from OERU in French that is going to go live, that is already live, but is going to start in November. We also revised the already existing guidelines for the inclusion of learners with disabilities to make an emergency movement guidelines booklet for online distance learning. And that was in the framework of the UN partnerships of UNPRPD and for wide COVID response. We also had 7 webinars on policy frameworks and OER, and in all our webinars, there were about 725 people involved from 68 countries. So the point is that we are still learning. We are still in the process of trying to find what is the best way to go forward. UNESCO made, Ebba already mentioned this, made a joint call for action, supporting learning and knowledge sharing through OER, because the global COVID-19 pandemic actually had as a result the paradigm shift where ICT is no longer, it is a need for education. So in this context, the access to knowledge through OER could be really a catalyst for all people involved. I am Greek, but I am based in India, where all the schools are closed since March 2009. And I can tell you that it is really, really painful. There are generations that are going to be, it's really bad. So I cannot talk about lessons learned because it is too early at this stage. And we have not reflected, we did not have the time to reflect as such on lessons learned. But I can tell you one thing, that it really takes a village. So I will share my presentation on the chat, as well as my email if you want to contact me, and also the OER Dynamic Coalition membership form, because you are all invited to be part of the Dynamic Coalition. OER Dynamic Coalition is actually what? OER enthusiasts that come together and speak and try to find solutions to problems, if possible. So I invite you all to be part of it. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to present, and apologies for the glitch.
Thank you very much, Eleni, and don't worry, because it was, we could follow you very well, and if you are going to send us the PowerPoint, is not a problem. We will share all of them, all the presentations, so thank you very much. And you were mentioning some interesting things. You were also saying about the webinars. For example, also here, the last speaker was speaking about webinars, but you were saying that they are not just about creation OERs, but they are also focused on the rest of the actions. This is also good, because these webinars are also focused on sustainability, inclusive aspects, and also policies. And here we were mentioning policies and incentives all the time during this session. So maybe I will take advantage now that we are starting the discussion, and I will ask the first question to you to know a little bit your opinion, and also from UNESCO. How do you do to create, to propose this kind of incentives to governments in order that they can also boost their institutions, their educational institutions, and that they can recognize their teachers, students, and other stakeholders involved in OERs and digital education? Are you planning to do something, or which is your proposal? How can you manage?
Yes, yes, that is the thing that I did not mention. The work in progress is something that I did not mention. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. So we are working on a portal, the OER Dynamic Coalition portal, that will be for all member states to go and search anything related to OER. And it will have an informative site, and also a collaborative part where actually people can work together if they are trying to implement policy, or if they are trying to put together a legislative text or guidelines. They can work together and share best practices on that. If everything goes well, is going to go live at the end of next year. And also we are preparing some publications, guidelines, UNESCO publications on guidelines on best practices of policy, where member states that already created policy, OER policies, will share their examples and how they did it. The next two events that we are going to have will be on interregional cooperation on ICT CFT OER Hub, that is a hub for teachers training. And there will be many member states involved, and you are all welcome to be part of it. And in December, our last webinar for the year will be on inclusive education and OER. So how to make sure that OER is and openly licensed materials are also accessible to people with disabilities.
Okay, thank you very much for your all these proposals that you are doing and answering the question. We have now some questions from the audience. We will have the first questions from the chair of our project.
Guidelines, and so how it would be manageable that our project actually, which will produce also some kind of recommendations and our experience through the research, how this could be passed to you, to the UNESCO, and to be eventually included in these kind of guidelines. Did you hear me?
Well, yes, I heard you very well. So I don't know how it can be done concretely, but I can tell you that if you are part of the OER Dynamic Coalition, you can be part of all the initiatives we are doing. And you can be also part of the teacher training webinars, and even if you would like, organize the training yourselves.
Okay, thank you very much. This is what I was, I wanted to be sure that this is the right approach. So to become a part of this community and then take an active part in the next.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I maybe add? I think this is very promising with this common portal. It is, and I would really recommend you all to be part in the Dynamic Coalition, because it's such a huge and wonderful resource. But what I would like to add is that while we are waiting for this portal, so to say, I will encourage you to upload materials from your project and your project to OER Commons, because that is also one way to make it shared and visible for everyone. I think maybe you, Gemma, at least know about OER Commons. I can write the link in the chat as well. And that is just, you can just create an account and then you can upload whatever you have.